Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zhang here, and today I'm starting a new series on my channel where I talk about one team I've used in the VGC 2015 season and tell you everything you need to know about that team. I'm basically going to cover my team building process, all the Pokemon on the team including items, EV spreads, and moves, things that the team were weak to, things the team were really good against, and ways I would play with it, and finally overall weaknesses and strengths with the team and my performances with it. My hope is that through this series you can really learn how I build teams a bit better while also learning a couple of my EV spreads, movesets, Pokemon, etc. I think that's a good way for the metagame to develop is by revealing some of these things since I really have no need to keep them secret. So I hope you guys enjoy this series, and we'll be kicking it off today with the Mega Salamence team I've used for the last week or so. If you've watched Road to Ranked at all, you'll know that I brought it to 2 local Premier Challenges last weekend, and I did pretty well with it. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So I knew going into last weekend that I had 2 Premier Challenges, as I mentioned, which are local level events where you can win championship points in terms of qualifying for Worlds. Now, New York and New Jersey Premier Challenges are super competitive, and before last weekend I actually had only been able to attend 2 because my weekends are really busy, especially Sundays where I can almost never miss my community service program that I lead. So it is pretty difficult to find time to attend these tournaments, and at one point I was ranked 1st in the country and the world in championship points, but I fell down all the way to 5th after a couple of months of not attending tournaments, so I knew last weekend was a huge opportunity to capitalize and try to regain the lead that I lost. So I was 5th in terms of championship points in the country going into it, and I really wanted to do well. I also knew that I wanted to use a Mega Salamence team after seeing my good friend Angel Miranda win a Premier Challenge in Pennsylvania with it. I'll link his team in the description below, but his team was revolved around Salamence and Clefable, which was really powerful. So that basically gave me the inspiration to use Physical Dragon Dance Mega Ments. I also really wanted to try out offensive support Gengar and Terrakion, which were things I had been thinking about for a very long time. So for the actual team building process, I basically started with the Mega Ments, Gengar, and Terrakion. Ments as the offensive Dragon Dance Sweeper, Gengar as another offensive support Pokemon with Icy Wind, Taunt, Will-O-Wisp, which I'll go into later, and Terrakion really to improve my matchup against Pokemon like Kangaskhan, Bisharp, and Charizard Y, and Thundurus. So Terrakion hits a lot of the format for super effective damage, and Rock Slide's just such a good move anyway. Bisharp was the 4th Pokemon I added because I really hated playing against Fairy-type Pokemon, especially Pokemon like Sylveon, and of course when you have a Bisharp you just scare away Sylveons in Team Preview, so having it helped out a lot. And while Bisharp is considerably slower than the remainder of the team, having Icy Wind support from Gengar really helped out because Bisharp after an Icy Wind can outspeed most of the format, so I wasn't really worried about it being slower than most of my other Pokemon, and Life Orb Sucker Punch is one of its main moves of course, so that still does a ton of damage and it's priority boosted. The 5th Pokemon I added was Scarf Hydreigon because I wanted a way to effectively one-hit KO opposing dragons with Draco Meteor. I've been using Scarf Hydreigon for the majority of the season over Specs, which was really popular in VGC 14, just because I think the speed control is a bit more necessary for Hydreigon this year, where you have Pokemon like Kangaskhan, Thundurus, Landorus, which can just outspeed and, effectively KO or do a lot of damage to it. So I do like Scarf a bit more just for that damage output, even though it's slightly decreased. To finish the team, I added Amoonguss because Amoonguss is really good with redirection support for Rage Powder, of course. Really helps out against some of the more thriller and offensive Pokemon on the team, and it really helped Mega Men set up so many times. I ended up choosing Amoonguss as well just because a lot of people were not properly prepared for it, and with Rocky Helmet, it was really good. And Regenerator was an awesome ability too because I would lead with it a lot of the times, take some damage, switch out, and then save it for the late game. And of course, Spore is a crazy broken move, so that basically rounds out the team building process. So now to go into each Pokemon. The first one of course was Mega Ments, and this one had Intimidate with the added nature of D-Dance, Earthquake, Double Edge, and Protect. And that EV spread, as you see, is very vanilla and boring, but quite honestly, I built this team the night before the Premier Challenge, so I didn't really have much time to finesse and make a more complicated EV spread. And quite honestly, this was a Premier Challenge. It wasn't like Nationals or Worlds where you're trying to counter most of the metagame. It's an event where you'll want to go into because you're facing opponents of all kinds of skill level, including Worlds caliber players and beginning players. So, for smaller events like this, I feel more comfortable going with more basic spreads just because you don't know what exactly you're going to run into. There's no need to really try to counter the meta when the meta isn't even really that developed. So, of course, I could have taken out EVs from attack and speed because I have Dragon Dance, which already boosts those stats. But at the same time, like I said, I didn't really have much time to come up with a spread. And I was actually EVing the Ments on the way to the tournament that day. So, I didn't really mind, going with a fully offensive spread. But you should definitely do some damage calcs and play around with your own Mega Ments should you choose to run it. Moveset is pretty self-explanatory, but having Earthquake really helped over Roost, which a lot of people also like running. I like Earthquake more because it helps against steel types like Heatran, which is a really big one, because otherwise Double Edge is kind of walled by it. So it gives you more type coverage, and there's almost no Pokemon in the format that can take both the Double Edge and a Earthquake. The next Pokemon was Gengar. This one had a Focus Sash with Timid Nature of Sludge Bomb, Taunt, Icy Wind, and Will-O-Wisp. Also a very standard EV spread, but Gengar is one of those Pokemon that really needs max speed because you want to at least speed tie with opposing 110s. Max Special Attack here really helped out because Sludge Bomb with Max Special Attacks actually does so much damage, especially against Pokemon like Sylveon. And a lot of the times I'd be able to combo Gengar with Terrakion and just double target it with a Sludge Bomb Rock Slide to effectively one-hit KO it, which a lot of people certainly weren't prepared to deal with, so that definitely helped out a lot. As for the moveset, you see that I don't have Protector's Shadow Ball, and the reasoning behind this is because I really needed all the other moves. Icy Wind for speed control, Will-O-Wisp to burn opposing physical type attackers, Taunt to shut down Pokemon like Amoonguss, Redirection, and Trick Room, and Sludge Bomb really because I needed to hit fairy types a bit harder. Of course, when you don't run Shadow Ball and Protect, you know, Pokemon like Aegislash give you a bit more trouble. Not having Protect actually made it a lot more difficult to deal with Kangaskhan's because they could Scrappy Fake Out, but honestly I didn't really mind it because this moveset covered so many of my bases and it helped out against so many Pokemon and lead options, so definitely one of my favorite go-to Pokemon. And Sash of course ensured it to stick around for a turn longer, ensuring that it got at least 2 attacks off. Next one was Terrakion with Lumberry. One of my favorite Pokemon in the VGC 2011 season. I used Choice Scarf that year, but I do think non-Scarf variants are slightly better now that the format is a bit more bulky. Close Combat, Rock Slide, Protector, all pretty self-explanatory, and Double Kick, as I've mentioned in previous videos, was really there to effectively one-hit KO Bisharp and Smeargle, which of course often carry Focus Sash. Double Kick is an idea I got from Angel Miranda and Simon Yip, so thank you to them for that idea. And while I didn't actually use Double Kick throughout the course of the weekend, it helped out a lot just knowing that should the endgame be Terrakion against Bisharp, I would win 100% of the time. EV spread is also self-explanatory, but Terrakion's one of those Pokemon that really doesn't need a more complicated EV spread because it's really there to KO Pokemon, not really to survive attacks, so I felt fine going with this one as well. Bisharp is also very cookie cutter. If you see my Bisharp analysis, you'll know, I've been running this kind of Bisharp for a very long time. I had Life Orb over Sash because I liked the increased damage output, and of course I had Sash on Gengar, and Sash was definitely more important on Gengar, so Life Orb was the second best go-to option for Bisharp here. Max attack and speed, 4 special defense EVs with Sucker Punch, Knock Off, Iron Head, and Protect. Not much more that needs to be said, but it really helps against Pokemon like Cresselia, against Aegislash, against Sylveon, etc. And Bisharp is one of my favorite Pokemon in the format just because of the high damage output, but you really need to be careful if you are playing with it because it is really frail. It can get, one hit KO'd or 2 hit KO'd by most attacks, so definitely be careful. And because of that, I had Hydreigon, which with the Choice Scarf, and this one was the only one that wasn't a really basic EV spread. It had 44 HP, 36 defense, max special attack, and 176 speed. This allowed me to survive Dragon Claws from non-boosted Jolly Garchomps, if it ever came down to that. Of course, Scarf and that speed allows me to outspeed Pokemon like Mega Manectric and anything slower, so really most of the format that wasn't Scarf, I'd be able to outspeed. Max special attack obviously for increased damage output with the Modest Nature, just because you don't really need Timid. Draco, Fire Blast, Earth Power, and Dark Pulse. So a lot of people have been asking, why don't you have Flash Cannon on your Hydreigon? And it's because I already have multiple ways to deal with fairy types like Sludge Bomb on Gengar and Iron Head on Bisharp and Double Edge from the Salamence. So I wanted Earth Power. That was the last move I ended up deciding on because Heatran was a very annoying Pokemon to deal with, and it's a nice move for a 100% accurate way to hit Pokemon in the end of the game, especially when a lot of the Pokemon can resist other Dark Pulse, which is the other 100% accurate move I had. Draco for maximum damage output, and Fire Blast to really hit those steel types like Mawile, which give me trouble otherwise. And finally, the last Pokemon on the team was Amoonguss with Rocky Helmet, Regenerator with Bold Nature, Spore, Rage Powder, Giga Drain, Protect. I was actually considering running Sludge Bomb over one of the attacks, but I figured I'd rather have Giga Drain in terms of offense to beat water types, and I already had Sludge Bomb on Gengar, so it wasn't really necessary. As for the EV spread, yes, it is very simple, but here's my logic behind it. Most of the special type Pokemon in the format already don't do very much damage to Amoonguss. For example, Sylveon, Thundurus, Rotom Wash, Zapdos, just to name a couple. Those are really annoying to deal with, but against Amoonguss has actually a really good matchup against those, so I wasn't really too worried about it. And against fire type Pokemon like Rotom Heat, I'm not going to be keeping an Amoonguss in against it anyway, so that was my logic behind it. And the metagame is so physically oriented right now, especially with Kangaskhan, Landorus, T, Bisharp, etc., that I felt more comfortable going with this kind of EV spread just because it ensured that I would survive basically any physical type attack. And with Rocky Helmet, it made those physical type attacks even my opponent would basically be doing a lot of damage to themselves when they attack my Amoonguss with, physical type attacks. So even though, yes, it is a simple spread, I really liked it. There wasn't any time where I really needed more special defense EVs. And against special type attack Pokemon, let's say, opposing dragons like Hydreigon, I would just use my own Hydreigon, which is Scarf, to really cover those attackers. So the team was kind of built in a way to beat a lot of the more common special type attackers, so Amoonguss really didn't miss any of the special defense EVs. So playing with the team, I would lead with Gengar over 90% of the time, and when I didn't, it was basically Hydreigon over Gengar. The partner was really dependent on what my opponent had though, but that was it was either Gengar or Hydreigon that would always come out, because those Pokemon give so many options against the format, and it's very difficult to beat, especially with the proper support. A lot of the times I would have Amoonguss and Salamence in the back for potential late game setups. There were games where I would bring in Amoonguss and Salamence when my opponent didn't have any good ways to deal with it, and then staring down an Amoonguss and Salamence when you have two Pokemon that can't pick up KOs on either is really scary, because all Amoonguss needs to do is Rage Powder, all Salamence needs to do is Dragon Dance, and that could easily just win you games. So that was a game, setup that I had in the back of my mind a lot of the times. My strategy really was to take advantage of these quick and powerful attacks. As you've noticed, my team is really fast, so it really relied on outspeeding the opponent and just KOing them before they could really do anything. Icy Wind also made it really difficult for my opponent to get the speed advantage, because I'm fast enough, but Icy Wind ensured me to outspeed even anything else. And Amoonguss was there really to help out for Rage Powder, but it also helped out against opposing speed control, because, I can redirect Thunder Waves, I can Spore you to put you to sleep, I can help out in the Trick Room matchup, because should your opponent set up Trick Room, Amoonguss can just Spore everything, because it is slow enough as it is, though in future I might use Relax 0 Speed 1 just to help out against the Trick Room matchup a bit more. But of course, no team in VGC is perfect, or no Pokemon team is ever perfect, so there were a bunch of notable weaknesses that I want to mention. Opposing speed control was very irritating to deal with, because, moves like Thunder Wave, Icy Wind, Trick Room, very just difficult to deal with. Tailwind is a big one too, which doubles your opponent's speed, so Icy Wind's only reducing the speed by one stage, so that was definitely really difficult to deal with and gave me a lot of trouble, especially on the Road to Ranked episodes. But Terrakion, Bisharp, and Gengar are all really frail, and because only one Pokemon there can have the Sash, the other two can easily be one-hit KO'd, so I had to play safely with those. Fighting type and Fairy type attacks were definitely very threatening as well if they weren't redirected, and Dazzling Gleam / Hyper Voice is really scary to deal with. A lot of the times I would lose my Pokemon too quickly because they were too frail. As a result, I'd be playing down 3-4 or 2-4, which is really scary, but it was all about maintaining positioning. Losing Mega Salamence, too quickly was also really scary, because I had Double Edge on Salamence, so with that plus the recoil damage, plus any damage my opponent was doing, plus the fact I didn't have any bulk on it, made it very easy to KO, so, conserving it and saving it properly for the main threats was important as well. And of course, not having Protect on Gengar and Hydreigon made things pretty difficult, because with Hydreigon, if you are to Draco Meteor the first turn, you don't have a way to protect her the second turn, so you're either forced to stay in and Draco or switch out, which your opponent can take advantage of, and Gengar not having Protect allowed Kangaskhan with Scrappy to fake out to break my Sash, which was kind of annoying, but otherwise, yeah, those were just a couple of notable weaknesses the team had to deal with. So in conclusion, I really liked the team. Overall, I finished 5-0 in Swifts at Cedar Grove and lost in the first round of Top Cut to Angel Miranda, whose team is listed below. The Gengar Terrakion mirror match was really scary, and he had Mega Mens as well. It was a really back and forth set, hacksy all around, but I thought Angel played really well, and I just think I didn't optimize my chances, because I risked the Gengar speed tie both games 2 and 3, and I lost the speed tie both times. Had I hit it, I would have ended up winning, and there was some other hacks that went into it, but I think Angel played the better sets, so that's why I really disliked the Gengar Terrakion matchup, and he had Gastrodon, which gave my team a lot of trouble, so I finished 5th there and earned 20 championship points. In Brooklyn, I went 5-1 in Swiss, but ended up winning out in Top Cut. My one loss in Swiss was to Eddie, who had a really neat team, as you'll see listed below, and I basically lost that set because in the mid game, I brought in Hydreigon over Bisharp, which was a huge misplay when I lost one of my Pokemon. I missed the KO against his Mega Metagross with Dark Pulse when my Bisharp could have just, forced the switch out or KO'd it with Sucker Punch. So that was a really big mistake that I realized after rewatching the game. But I did end up winning out in Top Cut, so I ended up placing first, winning 40 championship points there, so my total championship point count now is 320, so 3rd in North America and the world, which is pretty neat. And as I mentioned before, I think all I need is one more strong placing in the tournament, and I should have my invite to the World Championships locked up. But that's it for this team analysis, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun to make, and I think it'll be pretty helpful. So let me know if you enjoyed it. Please show your feedback for the series by, leaving a like on the video, by giving me comments. Feedback, as always, is much appreciated, and I'll be bringing more of these very soon. So definitely try out the team, play around with the EV spread, so it's definitely a lot of fun. And yeah, that's it for this video, guys. I'll see you later today with Road to Ranked. Alright, peace.